sweet peas. I've had to take a nerve pill already today for my woes. My Chromebook has not been allowing me to record videos for the longest time. And then my phone. Oh. I just did a little test. I'm on my Chromebook now. I know y'all can't pray for me, but I asked for prayers on Tracy's a while ago, so maybe with all those prayers. Anyway, I'm trying to finish up the last chapter of Anne of Avonlea. We've got just a little bit more to go. And gosh, I left with, just as Miss Lavender and Stephen Irving were pronounced man and wife, a very beautiful and symbolic thing happened. The sun suddenly burst through the gray and poured a flood of radiance on the happy bride. Instantly, the garden was alive with dancing shadows and flickering lights. What a lovely omen, thought Anne as she ran to kiss the bride. Then the three girls left the rest of the guests laughing around the bridal pair while they flew into the house to see that all was readiness for the feast. "Thanks be to goodness it's over, Miss Shirley, ma'am," breathed Charlotta the Fourth, "and they're married safe and sound, no matter what happens now. The bags of rice are in the pantry, ma'am, and the old shoes are behind the door. And the cream for whipping is on the cellar steps." Oops. Forgot to turn that light on so my color may do some strange things. At 2:30, Mr. and Mrs. Irving left, and everybody went to Bright River to see them off on the afternoon train. As Miss Lavender, Mrs. Irving, stepped from the door of her old home, Gilbert and the girls threw the rice, and Charlotta the Fourth hurled an old shoe with such excellent aim that she struck Mr. Allen squarely on the head. But it was reserved for Paul to give the prettiest send-off. He popped out of the porch, ringing furiously a huge old brass dinner bell, which had adorned the dining room mantel. Paul's only motive was to make a joyful noise, but as the clangor died away from point and curve and hill across the river, came the chime of fairy bells ringing clearly, sweetly, faintly, and more faint. And that's for the couple that are leaving. That's what they're hearing. As if Miss Lavender's, the former, beloved echoes were bidding her greeting and farewell. And so, amid this benediction of sweet sounds, Miss Lavender drove away from the old life of dreams and make-believes to a fuller life of realities in the busy world beyond. 2 hours later, Anne and Charlotta the Fourth came down the lane together. Gilbert had gone to West Grafton on an errand, and Diana had to keep an engagement at home. Anne and Charlotta had come back to put things in order and lock up the little stone house. The garden was a pool of late golden sunshine with butterflies hovering and bees booming, but the little house had already that indefinable air of desolation which always follows a festivity. I'm thinking Anne and Gilbert should live in that house. What do y'all think? "Oh, dear me, don't it look lonesome?" sniffed Charlotta the Fourth, who had been crying all the way home from the station. "A wedding ain't much cheerfuller than a funeral after all when it's all over, Miss Shirley, ma'am." A busy evening followed. The decorations had to be removed, the dishes washed, the uneaten delicacies packed into a basket for the delectation of Charlotta the Fourth's young brothers at home. Anne would not rest until everything was in apple pie order. After Charlotta had gone home with her plunder, Anne went over the steel rooms, feeling like one who trod along some banquet hall deserted. and closed the blinds. Then she locked the door and sat down under the silver poplar to wait for Gilbert, feeling very tired but still unweariedly thinking long, long thoughts. "What are you thinking of, Anne?" asked Gilbert, coming down the walk. He had left his horse and buggy out at the road. "Of Miss Lavender and Mr. Irving," answered Anne dreamily. "Isn't it beautiful to think how everything has turned out? How they have come together again after all the years of separation and misunderstanding." "Yes, it's beautiful," said Gilbert, looking steadily down into Anne's uplifted face. "But wouldn't it have been more beautiful still, Anne, if there had been no separation or misunderstanding? If they had come hand in hand all the way through life, with no memories behind them but those which belonged to each other?" For a moment Anne's heart fluttered queerly, and for the first time her eyes faltered under Gilbert's gaze, and a rosy flush stained the paleness of her face. It was as if a veil that had hung before her inner consciousness had been lifted, giving to her view a revelation of unsuspected feelings and realities. Perhaps, after all, romance did not come into one's life with pomp and blare like a gay knight riding down. Perhaps it crept to one's side like an old friend, through quiet ways. Perhaps it revealed itself in seeming prose until some sudden shaft of illumination flung athwart its pages betrayed the rhythm and the music. Perhaps love unfolded naturally out of a beautiful friendship, as a golden-hearted rose slipping from its green sheath. Then the veil dropped again, but the Anne who walked up the dark lane was not quite the same Anne who had driven gaily down it the evening before. The page of girlhood had been turned as by an unseen finger, and the page of womanhood was before her, with all its charm and mystery, its pain and gladness. Gilbert wisely said nothing more, but in his silence he read the history of the next 4 years in the light of Anne's remembered blush. 4 years of earnest, happy work, and then the guerdon of a useful knowledge gained, a sweetheart won. Behind them in the garden, the little stone house brooded among the shadows. It was lonely, but not forsaken. It had not yet done with dreams and laughter and the joy of life. There were to be future summers for the little stone house. Meanwhile, it could wait, and over the river in purple durance the echoes bided their time. That's all of Anne of Avonlea. And tomorrow we'll start Anne of the Island. The first chapter is called The Shadow of Change. Hope to see you guys live at 5 today. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Hope to see you live at 5. Tea with GrannyDee. Bye-bye.